listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. On with me today, I have my co-host, Mark McCallum, CEO at NASBP. Hey Mark, thanks for being on.
Absolutely, Kat. Great to be here.
I am very excited about our topic today. We're going to be talking about delegated design and design assist. And to do that with us today, we have Ken Cobleigh, Vice President and Counsel with AIA Contract Documents. Hey Ken, how are you?
I'm good, Kat. And Mark, how are you guys doing?
We're doing great, Ken. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on with us today. Before we dive into the topic, would you be able to tell us just a little bit about yourself, Ken, and about AIA Contract Documents?
Sure. And thank you for inviting me. So my name is Ken Cobleigh, and I am Vice President and Counsel for AIA Contract Documents. I am in charge of the team that oversees the review, revision, and/or creation of the AIA contract documents. I am an attorney by training, and before coming to this program, I had about 18 years in private practice as a construction litigation attorney. And I've been with the AIA contract documents program for 16 years now.
That's terrific. So to start talking about delegated design, design assist, I feel like those are terms we've heard in the industry, but I understand there's some confusion around what these terms mean and how they're used. Would you be able to just give us and share a definition for delegated design and design assist?
Sure, and I can share some definitions with you, but I think it might be important to provide a little bit of background
Sure.
context for all of this. So, over the past several decades, there's been an increasing emphasis on collaboration between design professionals and contractors in order to realize the benefits that can be achieved when certain aspects of the project's design are informed by contractor input. And so the parties have constantly tried to develop strategies to connect design professionals with contractors and specialty contractors and product manufacturers during the design stage of a project. And as a result of that effort, two terms came to the fore in the industry: delegated design and design assist. And when we were getting ready to do the 2017 update to the A201 family of documents, we got some feedback from some contractors who said, you know what, it would be really great if we could put some parameters around these two concepts, particularly in the contract documents. And so we took a look at that. And then around the same time, we were contacted by AISC, the American Institute of Steel Construction, and they asked us if we would be willing to work with them on a white paper that might help set some parameters. And so that's what we set off to do first. Because as you can imagine, both design assist and delegated design are elements of the steel erection industry. And so we worked on the white paper with them, and we were able to collectively come up with definitions as part of the white paper. And the white paper used the continuum to try to help put some parameters around these concepts. And the continuum ran from informal involvement to design assist to delegated design at the other end of the continuum. So you asked me for some definitions, and I'll go right to them. Design assist describes a form of collaboration where a contractor provides information to assist the design professional's design. And delegated design, the party providing the delegated design, usually a trade contractor, sometimes a design firm, they actually take responsibility for the adequacy and accuracy of the design. So it is a pure delegation of the actual design requirements, whereas in design assist, it's a step back from that. And it's more about providing insights and judgments coming from the trade contractor or the general contractor's perspective as a constructor. So that's the definition and a little bit of a background on how we got to where we are now.
Ken, I've got a lot of thoughts floating around there. But first, before I forget this, so how do people get a hold of that white paper that you referenced?
So the white paper is on the internet. It's posted in a couple different locations, but I sent Kat links, and I believe Kat's going to post those as part of the material around this podcast. So folks can get the white paper through the link, and also Kat's got some links to samples of the documents that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll include those links in the description so that everybody can get to that white paper and get some more details on that.
So you kind of went through some background, but is it fair to say, and as construction and particularly different project delivery methods have evolved, there's been more design delegation that has actually occurred. But to a certain extent, design delegation is not a new concept and did occur in various forms and fashions. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that and that why it's so important now to kind of really put more formalization around the roles? But I know, for example, in the substitutions realm, that some would argue that is, in effect, a form of design delegation, or could be, if parties are not careful.
Right. So you're right. Delegated design has been around for a long time, and folks familiar with construction industry know that, for example, usually fire protection systems have often been, or almost always, part of delegated design. That is, the architect and the project design team says, you know what, it's this specialty contractor that does this, that understands the code, that understands the way the system operates, and the technical requirements and nuances. Let's just put some sort of requirement in the specifications. It might be a very plain requirement. It might be a performance requirement that the system has to perform to some very generalized standards, and then delegate the responsibility for the details of that design, actually engineering the system, to the party who best understands it. And often, as I said, oftentimes it's the same trade contractor. We see that sometimes with curtain wall manufacturing and supplying. The engineering of the connections and the overall design oftentimes gets delegated there. I think there are a number of instances where you have a specialty contractor that's just in a better position to understand the nuances. And so the design team delegates that obligation. And so we have had that in the industry for a long time. The AIA's A201 document has often referenced that, and I'm struggling here for a minute to remember. I think it's 12. It's 3.12.10.1 of the A201 is a complete section on the obligations flowing back and forth between the design team and the contractor over what happens when an element is delegated to the contractor, an element of the design.
Well, and I know obviously construction has grown in complexity over time. This is a recognition of efficiencies that are occurring, and as you said, where best to place certain risks. And I imagine that the committee itself has a lot of discussions on the proper allocation of design responsibility. Can you talk about how the committee comes up, or what's the kind of process that they go through, particularly on something that is sensitive to both architects and contractors, like design delegation?
Sure. So when the documents committee, the AIA documents committee, was working on not only the A201 in its last iteration in 2017, but also in the development of this delegated design agreement and the design assist agreement. Um, they take input from a number of different sources, and they're always trying to balance the equities. They're trying to balance their concerns as design professionals against the real challenges that contractors may also face, and understanding that other design professionals can help them, or that the contractor, with its knowledge of the construction industry and how these elements fit together, can help inform the design. So they go about it in trying to take all of that into consideration, and then developing what they believe to be the best process that will balance the risks associated with it. So it's intended to be fair to everybody and to take into account those various concerns, while at the same time not being overly burdensome on either party. They try to put in elements that will make sure that when the input is coming in, it's coming in at the right time and not so late in the process that it requires a bunch of rework, so on and so forth. But that it's all about trying to be fair and balance the concerns of all the parties involved.
So the two documents you referenced, the design delegation agreement and the design assist agreement, in what families are those used? Are you talking more just in what you might term the conventional context, or are you talking about construction management, design build, or all of those?
So they can be used in several different delivery models. It's not exclusive to one particular delivery model. Anytime you have an opportunity for a contractor or a specialty trade subcontractor or whatever to inform the design, then the design assist document can be used. Anytime there's an opportunity or a need for the design team to actually pass off responsibility for delegated design, for design, and delegate it to the construction side or downstream, you can use the delegated design agreement. So the design assist agreement is intended to be used between, and we call it a client and a consultant. So anytime you can imagine that there can be some benefit from this consultant, who could be, again, a contractor, a specialty trade sub, or a manufacturer, to provide some sort of input to aid the design team in what ultimately becomes the final design for the project, you can use that document. Anytime a contractor, and this is one of the distinctions between the two documents, anytime a contractor can engage a consultant, which would be a specialty trade contractor or whatever, to create this delegated design element, you can use the delegated design agreement.
So it sounds like they're very flexible. One thing I always think about with industry accepted standardized forms, why they're so important is, one, they bring clarity, and two, they promote communication. And I would imagine in the design assist, design delegation realm, those are two really critical factors. Do you care to comment a little bit more about that?
I think they are very critical factors, and you're right about these two agreements. They're intended to facilitate a full conversation between, in the case of design assist, the client and consultant, and in the case of delegated design, the contractor and consultant, a full communication over the parameters of the engagement, um, what it's going to take, what the roles and responsibilities are. And again, there's slightly different roles and different elements of responsibility, whether you're dealing with delegated design or design assist, right? Design assist, um, the design team can rely on the work of the consultant, but at the end of the day, responsibility for the ultimate design rests with the design team. In delegated design, there's a shifting of that burden, that responsibility over to the contractor and perhaps whoever the contractor engages in this delegated design work, a shifting of responsibility for the actual adequacy of the design. And so these documents are intended to make that distinction and cause the parties to talk about that and to talk about a whole lot of other things related to contracting for that kind of work, right? First, there's a discussion about the terms of the engagement. There's a discussion about um, compensation to be
Right.
paid for delivering these kinds of services. Um, there will be a discussion about insurance requirements, which can become very important, particularly in the delegated design realm. So that's what these documents are intended to do, is to clarify some of those issues and force a good, robust dialogue among the two parties so they understand exactly what the expectations are.
Well, you really hit on something that I think deserves maybe a little bit deeper treatment, which is the presence of insurance coverage now for contractors and others that are involved with design delegation responsibilities. To what extent has that driven AIA in developing these documents and kind of formalizing this as a resource out there? Has this kind of gone hand in hand, knowing that there's ultimately a risk transfer insurance coverage that might be available to these parties?
I don't know that the availability of insurance coverage played a big role in it. I think, though, you did hit on a key factor, and that is there is this risk transfer element. And whenever you have risk transfer, whenever you're dealing with substantial risk elements, it's always important to have a contract that makes those risks, um, responsibilities for those risks clear,
Yeah.
and sort of hammers home the point to each of the parties what they're going to be responsible for. So I think that um, the recognition of the risk transfer was really one of the more uh, important factors. Also, honestly, trying to put parameters around what it means if somebody's providing design assist services versus delegated design services. And remember, we said in the white paper, we talked about a continuum where you have this informal element on one end and delegated design on the other end. And design assist falls not really in the middle, a little bit more towards the delegated design side, but between the two, in terms of risk, responsibility, and what the expectations are.
Well, that's why I think this is such a critical subject for surety professionals to understand the distinction between design delegation and design assist as they're making their underwriting decisions on whether or not to provide a performance guarantee to a particular client. That they understand the underlying obligation that's being assumed, and to the extent that there are insurance coverages applicable, but that they are in place as well once they understand their responsibilities. Um, when you went through and created these documents, I'm assuming you go out there and you do a lot of outreach with interested parties. Can you characterize some of the folks you talked with in forming these documents?
Sure. In addition to the folks that are on the documents committee that have varying degrees of experience with this, we got substantial feedback from contractors or attorneys that represent contractors as part of this development process. So the AIA Contract Documents Program has a pretty substantial relationship with the ABA Forum on Construction Law. And we often go out to folks in the forum, particularly in certain divisions like the folks that generally represent contractors or trade contractors or owners and design professionals. There are different groups within the ABA. And so we went to them and we got a lot of feedback from folks in the forum, attorneys that are construction lawyers that represent the various parties, and ask them to review that. So that's a normal part of our process for the development of homes, and we certainly followed that here because we wanted to make sure that we understood the varying perspectives of the parties that would be involved in these documents.
Oh, that's great and so important. I was wondering, Ken, if you might touch on the interplay with technology and design delegation and design assist. It seems like, obviously the industry has been looking for productivity gains. It's been a while. Now, all of a sudden, there's wider spread technology adoption, and you have BIM and other technologies being put to the fore. Again, I see that as underscoring the importance in clear delegations of responsibility and obligations. So I would imagine that these are very important documents to come out and that they're probably going to be more frequently used and consulted. Do you think that's true?
So I do think that they're going to gain acceptance and popularity as people understand what they can do in this contracting scheme. With respect to technology, each of the documents has provisions related to what we have historically called the instruments of service, but the whatever the deliverables are, and if the let's take delegated design. If the prime agreement requires that the contractor provide design elements in a building information model, then those obligations can be passed down to the party providing the delegated design. And so there are requirements within each of those agreements that the parties will establish protocols around the delivery of digital data and deliverables that have to be digital, like models. And so it envisions that, sure, these elements could be part of building information modeling, could require other technological elements, and whatever's being flowed down goes to that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, they're in step with the future.
Yeah, and this is all part of it, right? It would be silly if we said, well, let's inform the design, or let's get this the benefits of this enhanced design, but we're only going to do it in 2D drawings.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what else do you think is important for surety professionals to understand about this topic as they're going around and trying to evaluate the most important components of risk that they need to look at and making that decision to underwrite a contract? What do you think they need to know?
Well, first, I think that it's important for them to understand whether or not how the terms are being used. One of the impetuses for the white paper, so a few years ago, and some of the other discussions were folks were using design assistant delegated design interchangeably when there is a definite distinction. So number one, make sure there's clarity around which of the two services is being provided. then once you have that clarity, understanding the distinction. There can be risk in both services, but for design assist, it's responsibility for the adequacy and accuracy of information provided to the design team. The design team is going to retain ultimate responsibility for the adequacy and accuracy of the total design, right? So to the extent a client is being asked to provide design assist services, there's still some liability there, but it's at that level of the services have to be, the information has to be accurate. The design team is going to rely on that, but they're still responsible for the ultimate design. Delegated design, you have a shift of the ultimate responsibility for design. The other thing is, in some jurisdictions, you can't delegate responsibility, right? In certain jurisdictions, particularly with structural elements, you may not be allowed to delegate that, and that may be something else that the surety professional needs to keep an eye on and understand.
And is that via licensing laws, code, or both? When you say that precludes it?
I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
And again, I'm most familiar with it in the structural arena, where certain jurisdictions have said, yeah, you can't delegate responsibility for the structural elements of your design. That has to stay with the architect of record and its design team.
Right. Well, it's a fascinating topic and an important one. So, Ken, we can't thank you enough for being here and enlightening us about design assist and design delegation. Thank you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much. And if any of the folks listening to the podcast need more information, you can get the samples through the links that Kat will pull up, or folks can reach out to me if they like.
And is there a general link just in terms of the AIA contract documents that people can go for more information and resources?
Yeah, so if you go to www.aia.org, you'll get to the AIA landing page, and then across the top there's a ribbon for contracts, and if you click on that, it'll take you to a big landing page where you can get information about the documents that are available. You can get to education resources and so on and so forth.
And we'll make sure to include the link to the white paper that you've been talking about, Ken, as well as the links directly to the Delegated Design Agreement and the Design Assist Agreement.
Perfect. Thank you.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk. Brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.